Hello, I'm Ramon Wrights, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you back to Cine Bijou for our second season. Over the coming months, we'll continue our exploration of independent film with thoughtful features and engaging interviews celebrating the diversity and innovation of the indie film world. Now, if you're new to Cine Bijou, first off, welcome, and I really hope you enjoy the show. You can also visit all our previous episodes on the following platforms: Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. And should you wish to support our work, you can become a member on Patreon. Your contribution, however modest, helps us to spotlight voices and stories that might otherwise go unheard. So wherever you are, grab your popcorn and settle in as we present today's feature, a closer look at the filmmakers, narratives, and techniques shaping the future of storytelling. So for today's episode, I'm joined by a returning guest. It's Cam Sully from the Jacked Up Review Show, and in this episode, we talk about the work of the late, great Roger Corman. Now, any cinephile or film fan worth their salt should know the name of Roger Corman. After all, he shaped and influenced the world of independent film as we know it, from its conception to production, marketing, and even the fun to be had along the way. Cam and I discuss some of Corman's most prolific work that includes some titles that we haven't heard of and some that you will definitely know by name. We also examine his impact on the world of independent film and the legacy he's left behind. I think I first heard of Roger Corman when I saw the video cover in our video rental store in 1981, I think.
Yes.
The video cover for Death Race 2000. That very, very slick action film with a subtle, not so subtle political message. I'd like to touch on the official sequel, Death Race 2050, at some point. And although I was too young to rent the film, I had read about it and it really caught my attention. So I looked, I was curious then, and I looked up, well, who's in this film? Oh, it's David Carradine, Kung Fu, Sylvester Stallone. Who are the directors? Never heard of Paul Bartel at the time. And then Roger Corman stuck in my head because at the time also I was watching more horror, and our BBC channel here, BBC Two, was showing late night horror films that included his run of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations that included a lot of screenings, repeated screenings of The Mask of the Red Death. So I saw his name on that. So that's what piqued my interest. And as I became older, more film literate, I sort of followed his career. Because Battle Beyond the Stars came along not long after that. And
yeah, Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah. Galaxy of Terror, Forbidden Worlds, you name it. What was your first introduction to Roger Corman?
I definitely would see some TCM stuff about him. I saw some Edgar Allan Poe stuff, but it was seriously like a mixture of like all the different like formulas he's known for. So like I knew he had done, Alien and Star Wars knockoffs. I knew everybody had gotten involved with them, Ron Howard, Joe Dante, all those guys, Jonathan Demme. And then it was just so funny how the minute you see the New Horizons photo, you're like, oh shit. So he did just about every other USA network, anything from the TV show Black Scorpion with Adam West to Don the Dragon Wilson's martial arts movies like Blood Fist. And then it's just so funny. He just would literally repeat like, hey, let's do another creature feature like Carnosaur. Hey, let me remake my movies for Showtime's, programming block. How about I do all these other just shot in the Philippines, movies often featuring women in prison, people in the apocalypse, just all kinds of just outrageous stuff. And like you can't go anywhere without seeing someone, whether they're a cameraman or an editor, who's worked for someone at his company. Like I probably one of the most successful guys who people know the name, but like they don't know the face would probably be like Rick Jacobson, who's had a big career now working for Stars and Sam Raimi on shows like Spartacus and Ash versus Evil Dead. But yeah, you look at him and he's done all kinds of Corman features, and again, it's just the whole like shoot fast, save time and film stock. It's just interesting how everybody uses a lot of it, and we're all inspired by it, whether we want to admit it or not. We've all are accustomed to it. Like I've encountered some direct-to-video people who, like they respect him but aren't always crazy about his movies, and I think that's just it. I think Corman just shines brighter. Whether or not he's making a turd or so bad it's good, trashy movie, it doesn't really matter because he clearly loves cinema so much, and much like Charles Band at Full Moon, it is that they did an awesome final chat together, which Charles replayed on his podcast recently. But it's interesting how they just it's a mixture of passion mixed in with just unusual kind of lucrativeness that you're never going to see again.
There is something quite magical about the likes of, you mentioned Charlie Band. With Roger Corman, definitely there is something magical there. Yes, he's produced, the collection of his work that includes a lot of production work, obviously a lot of work as an EP, as a producer, but over 50 titles as a director. He's even appeared in other people's movies. I know Jonathan Demme, featured in two of his movies. But it's hard to find in his catalogue um, films that you'll like all of them. You won't like all of them. There will be some that will resonate and some that don't, but there's something there for everybody, and you can tell the love and passion that goes into it. And for me, it was evident in his early stuff. So from The Intruder with William Shatner, which I had to check out when I
That is
saw that
probably the
was
most
made.
progressive movie he's done. Is just, a bigot in a small,
Hmm.
racially divided town, and how he wanted to do a movie kind of about the Black Panthers and some other stuff. And you're like,
Hmm.
oh, that would have been great. Why didn't you make that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's quoted as saying that his films are not overtly political. Um, but he cites Death Race 2050 as the exception. I don't know if you've seen that one, but if you watch it, anybody who hasn't seen it should check it out, and they will see that yes, he was definitely making a point about um, the political environment of 2016, 2017 at the time. And let's just say that a certain current president of the US would not be too keen uh, to see that film and to see one of the particular characters presented in a certain way. But we won't go into that too much. Um, so, in terms of his work, then, which of his titles really kind of sing to your soul, that express that magic and passion that you find in his work?
I think the passion that shines through is just mainly how he really does leave them to their own devices. Really, anytime I've heard about him taking away all the different movies, it would often just be because whoever he hired just did absolutely nothing that he told them to do. And they were just like any producer, they're coming in late, and he's like, okay, nothing personal, but I'm taking this away from you. It's got to get on time, and it's over budget and not on time. So, you know, just like any producer, that's what
Mhm.
you ultimately do. You salvage the production, you reshoot, and you throw some freebies in there, and it is so funny how he kind of started the trend of uh acquiring some side media like Marvel, and
Mhm.
sold off New World to focus on his other companies. And then um it's interesting how just how he loves film, but he also there's plenty of movies he's definitely more honest than other guys. There are plenty of movies where he'll laugh about, and then there's other ones like this one documentary where he talked about the Filipino filmmaking, where he's like, "I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't watch any of those movies, but hey, they have my name on it, and I was taking advantage of the factory farm that I built."
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And actually, I have to admit, his later productions, especially when he set up New Horizons, um, and struck the deal with Sci-Fi Channel, similar one to the
Yes, he
Asylum
did.
movie pictures,
Yep.
and put out much the same kind of content, a lot of sort of monster feature movies, and sort of low budget sort of drifts on sort of, more mainstream stuff. I mean, I have to admit, I have a fondness for the Sharktopus films,
Yes.
purely because they just get more crazy and uh, imaginative, if nothing else. I mean, you can pick apart those films. You can pick apart Eric Roberts. You can have a go at the effects, but you got to admit the imagination that goes into it and the entertainment factor. You're glued. You have to watch those films, and you can tell the kind of love goes into it. But um, but yeah, he did create this kind of factory, but he influenced and launched the careers of a lot of people even later in life. Uh, but I think it'd be worth touching on the list of people who got career breaks and are now, well, I guess quite frankly, they are the old guard of New Hollywood, as I mentioned earlier. So you've got Francis Ford Coppola, who directed a film called Dementia 13. Martin Scorsese's famous one is Boxcar Bertha, I believe it is. And of course, Joe Dante and John Sayles with Piranha, probably one of the
Hmm.
more famous Corman productions. And Jonathan Demme with, I think, at least two features, one of them being Caged Heat. I think we mentioned that before. Sylvester Stallone, David Carradine had a good career. Ron Howard with Grand Theft Auto. I mean, you keep going back over these list of films, and just when you think you can name them all, then a few more pop up. And then I guess if you'd agree, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, that's when you really see the length and breadth of the influence he has had on filmmaking then and continues to have now. Because a lot of these big names are still making films today.
Yep. And it's so funny how Jim Wynorski is probably the biggest one who went from his stuff to now he's working for Full Moon doing the same kind of stuff,
Mm,
scantily clad women in prison, blowing up monsters, and he's just like, yeah, it's so funny too how the he has kind of a funny he has an unusual kind of uh amount of people he reuses. Like if it wasn't someone who he birthed like Jack Nicholson, then he would also kind of get other people who were has-been actors but whose names still drew in stuff on foreign markets like Ben Gazzara or uh you know insert every other TV actor from like Gunsmoke or LA Law, and then
mhm,
you have absolutely a ton of use of David Carradine. Like he uses David Carradine before he's a big star, and then after he's a has-been. It's just so funny. Like he'd let you come back. I think that's the other thing too. He wasn't like other producers who, I mean, he definitely popularized the whole "this kid's hot. He's the talk of the town. Let's use him." Or release their movie I just made with them after they, become famous or as they're about to become famous. And but he also, he isn't like other guys who, oh, now that I can't afford you, I'm not letting you come back. He'd be like, no, name your price, I'll make it work, And so just lately, some I've seen some people nitpicking, oh, he clearly lost money. I'm like, what he's ultimately saying is he didn't overspend more
mhm,
than he was willing to pay for a lot of his stuff. Like,
yeah,
and I think the reason you can't call him like a guy who took advantage of people is because he basically had it pretty easy where he's like, hey, I'll give you something you can be proud of. I'll give you some creative control, and there were plenty of times where Wynorski and the other guys would read their scripts and be like, I'm not going to follow this. So I'm going to make up my own stuff,
mhm.
and he's like, okay, you're allowed to do it. Just get it done.
If you were to pick 10 of his best or 10 of his defining films, what would be the first one? It doesn't matter if it's number one or number 10.
So I'm cheating because I already did a similar episode like this. So I'm gonna go with the Fast and Furious. No, not that one. The
I
1955
know.
one.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, it's a fugitive on the run movie. It's a stock car racer movie. It's a unusual romance, and despite it involving a hostage taker and what have you, it's not creepy or anything. It's just a very unusual like take on just like just goes from one place to the next. And despite it mixing all these different things together, it actually feels pretty in love with what it's demonstrating.
Hmm. Okay.
I love a
So
blender. I love it.
yeah. So I'm gonna throw in Mask of the Red Death because as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah, hey.
I was a fan, but I'm talking about the original one, not the 89 remake that he was the EP on.
Adrian Paul.
Well, it's just that I'm a purist in that regard.
All good.
I like the first one. It's got Vincent Price in it. I mean, you know,
Hmm.
you could just watch him for hours. He could just do a telephone commercial and you would watch him. He was that he was that good a performer. The reason I like Mask of the Red Death, I thought was a compelling story, very intelligent, poetic, brilliant use of color in the shooting. I mean, it is beautifully shot. Even
Hmm.
in the castle, I mean, it had a real sense of place and time in the history of the set in its setting, and a terrific performance from Vincent Price as Prospero. And it was genuinely unnerving as well because we knew what the Red Death was, but you didn't know who he was. It maintained that mystery. And I think also what comes out there, well, there is the true sort of evil nature of the character. And
Yes.
it's one of those films that you go back over and over again and you still have all the feelings that you get from when you first saw it. But like I
Yes.
said, in every way, it is cinematic, it is epic, and it's something that I think has it dated? Yes, because FX and acting styles have evolved, but it's
Hmm.
not dated. It's a film of its time, but it remains timeless because I think anybody of any generation can go back and watch that
Yes.
and get so much from it and see
Hmm.
what he was able to do with a low budget.
Yes. Absolutely. You're never feeling like, hey, they don't have a idea what they're doing. It's like, oh, they know exactly
Hmm.
what they're doing.
Yeah. So over to you, sir.
Back at me.
Right
I'm
back
gonna
at you.
go with beginning of the end. Now,
Hmm.
you probably have seen it on Mystery Science Theater, and that's okay. But it is funny how it's just an unusual monster movie. Of
Hmm.
anything, let's have giant praying mantises.
Hmm. Oh, okay. So next one from me. I'm trying to sort of save some of the best for last. So I'm going to throw in one here that's going to come in a bit left field. This one was Corman's last directorial feature, Frankenstein Unbound.
There you go.
Now, for those who don't know who are listening, in 89, 90, Roger Corman directed, it was his last film as director, called Frankenstein Unbound. It was set, believe it or not, in the future. This is for anybody not listening, and it had an incredible cast. You had John Hurt, the late, great, fantastic Raul Julia or Raul Julia. And you also had Jason Patrick in there as Lord Byron, Bridget Fonda
Yeah.
as Mary Shelley, and one of our own British actors, Nick Brimble as the monster, and in a very, very strange casting turn, the late great pop icon Michael Hutchence as the
Hmm.
poet Shelley. And it basically it's a time travel film set in the future. It's kind of like Frankenstein meets 1960s Doctor Who meets Back to the Future, in
There you
which,
go.
in a very, very futuristic car, John Hurt's thrown back in time straight into the whole Frankenstein story. And what was good about it, I thought, is that they didn't really change the Frankenstein story, that it played out as it was written or as we know the story. But uh, Hurt's character, Dr. Buchanan, became this sort of observer, if you like, and
We joked
sometimes,
about it last week coincidentally. We were like,
yeah,
Frankenstein goes steampunk.
yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, they had to be careful even then on which creature design they used because Universal still had the rights to the classic Boris Karloff version. But it was cost 11 million to make, and you can see some of the money there. Obviously, it's spent on the cast, uh, but again, it's shot well. But I have to give that film kudos for imagination. And it's not just telling the Frankenstein story, but bringing the literary players into the fold and having this sort of brief love affair with Mary Godwin, as she was then before she married the poet Shelley. Um, it sadly it was one of it is the last film that lost a lot of money at the cinema. I'm sure it has made its money back over time, but I thought that was really quite clever and entertaining for mostly the right reasons and one or two unintentional moments. But yeah, I would rate Frankenstein Unbound um, as one of his best.
Totally.
Straight
Yeah.
over to you.
Okay, right back. Have you seen The Trip with Peter Fonda?
I've heard of it,
It's a
but I
lot of
haven't seen
freaky
it.
visuals and
Yeah.
everything. Total acid trip of a movie, and it's just interesting how
Hmm.
just he starts that whole hippie phase. And for
Hmm.
years, I was like, yeah, didn't he co-produce Easy Rider? I'm like, no, he regretted not making Easy Rider, but he still
Hmm.
gave him like some camera stock to borrow. So it's interesting how this is kind of like his makeup. He's like, okay, I'll work with you again,
Hmm.
Peter, on another project, and it's surprisingly just more artistic and from what we're used to seeing. Usually
Hmm.
he's just kind of having fun with effects and campy dialogue and sexy actors. It's like, no, this was an interesting thing, just showing kind of hippie lifestyle and acid trips,
Yeah.
and it's it does come on almost a lot on either
Hmm.
MGM HD or on Turner Classic Movies after midnight often.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, I totally recommend.
Okay. Next one from me then is going to be Forbidden World. I'm going to go for that on pure entertainment value. Yes, okay. This was one
Yes,
of those films, along with Space Raiders, that Corman said, "Hey, I know how we can cut down on the budget on this. Why don't we?"
it has fun with its crazy storyline. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of effects. It's like this is as close as Wynorski and James Cameron come
yeah.
to working.
But yeah, okay. They reused the effects, and I'm a fond. I'm really fond of
They
Battle
at
Beyond
least
the
find
Stars.
effects that work where I'm not
They
looking for
do.
that. I don't ever get like I don't know. Like Corman does it with such a kind of shamelessness where I'm just like,
Mm,
of course, I'm watching Roger Corman versus other people where I'm like, okay, that's just lazy.
mhm.
That explosion from that A-list movie does not match up with that low budget movie. That sucked.
But you know what? With Forbidden World, though, I
Yeah.
don't know who said it best, but they said this is how a monster movie should be:
Yeah.
fun, entertaining, and the monster bigger and
I'm a
badder than
producer of Dino
everybody
Croc
else.
versus Super
Yeah,
Gator. I
yeah,
know what I'm making.
exactly.
I made Carnosaur before Jurassic Park came out with Laura Dern's mother, no less. So
Yeah,
I know what I'm making. I know what I'm making.
yeah. But I think, okay, yes, he reused the effects from Battle Beyond the Stars, but he put in some new scenes there, and
Wynorski has some
it
fun with the
worked.
intense music
Yeah,
and closed off spaces. I never feel
absolutely.
like he's. This one definitely didn't feel rushed. Yeah.
No, no, it was entertaining from start to finish, and again, I think it had a bit of an influence on other independent filmmakers looking to make monster movies, but strapped for a budget and thinking, or sci-fi movies thinking,
Yeah.
okay, let's take our cue from this one. So yeah, Forbidden World definitely in there, and a shout out to the team, of course, at Forbidden Worlds Film Festival.
Hmm.
Hi guys, right, you sir, next.
Next up, I'm gonna go with The Gunfighter from 1950, Gregory Peck.
Hmm.
He was the script consultant on this as well, so this is interesting how he kind of comes up with the scenarios and oversees how
Hmm.
they're shot.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to throw in there. Now, it's not one film, it's a series of films, but you mentioned them earlier, the Blood Fist saga.
That was my next one after that. Yeah.
Okay. So I like Don Wilson. Sadly,
Yes.
Blood Fist 5 was featured the last performance of the wonderful Steve James from American
Yes.
Ninja and Bachelor Party and
Hmm.
I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, my favorite blaxploitation parody.
There was a recent $2 late fee did an interview with him, and
Hmm.
they mentioned how they wanted to keep working with him and Steve, and that's why
Yeah.
when he did Don did that HBO movie Red Sun Rising,
Yes.
Michael
Yes.
Ironside was the
Hmm.
captain in that because he had worked with Steve on McBain, and he was
Hmm.
like, "We'll do it for him." I'll take a pay cut. I don't care. I just got to do it for my friend who's died of
Yeah.
cancer. So
He
I
would.
find that interesting because mostly when
Yeah.
you're a character actor, you don't have that much time to pick and choose what you can do,
Hmm.
you know. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how they're like, but it's Steve, we can help out
Yeah.
Steve.
But do you know what? Some people will pick holes in all the Blood Fist films. I don't care. It's fun from start to finish, and Don Wilson does what he does really well in those films, and he is given every chance to shine. So it doesn't matter who's helming them. Uh, the spotlight is on him. He does his thing, and as someone who loves kick-ass martial arts films, I've got a lot of fondness for the Blood Fist films. So you said you were going to mention them as well. So please share some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Blood Fist works because like typical B movie, just have it be
Hmm.
related in concept only, have him play a different character in each movie. Like the first one is definitely capitalizing on the whole Rocky Blood Fist formula,
Hmm.
Bloodsport formula. And then after a while, they try everything from Total
Hmm.
Recall to Die Hard to
Yeah.
it's a shameless thing, much like The Substitute and
Hmm.
Best of the Best. Just goes to town with it, has fun with it, and
Yeah.
Don, to his credit, I know he's never going to win an acting award, but I'm sorry. I just always like him as a person. And compared to the other guys who are often just so flat or just show offs, and
Hmm.
Don is just interesting in that, much like a Cynthia Rothrock or Don or Jeff Speakman, he just
Hmm.
tries to look the part
Hmm.
instead of just get caught up in the schematics. He doesn't do what Van Damme would do, where he introduces something that absolutely makes no sense and only creates more plot holes. Like, why are you speaking with his accent?
Hmm.
He's kind of a more lowbrow Dolph Lundgren, Arnold type, where he's just like, I'm a performer, I'm doing this to have fun. And, he had a funny interview recently where he was talking about like Future Kick or whatever, and he was working with a guy who he had helped out, and he found himself correcting this director. He's like, "Hey, I understand why Roger Corman hired you. I'm also letting you know my 2 cents. Why don't you cut out this stupid incest storyline? It's really fucking stupid." Like, and it's just so funny how, as a guy, a person of color,
Hmm.
he's referred to himself as a Kentucky, a Filipino guy, so it's
Hmm.
already wild how he's a mixed guy and he would take on just bizarre stuff. And so I was never surprised when I see him appearing in mainstream stuff like Batman Forever to playing a bodyguard, soldier, or a guy who blows up cyborgs and all these different made for TV, direct video movies. He loved what he did, and he
Hmm.
also just he, I wish I had a career like his. Like he is the king of lowbrow, but
Hmm.
fun, much like Tim Thomerson and all these other guys. He just has fun doing all these bizarre concepts, and the way he works in martial arts into his stuff is way more accessible compared to, say, just a vanity project by some over the top guy like Stallone, or
Hmm.
a last minute change request by like Eddie Murphy, where you're like, oh, come on, guys, that doesn't work. Don't do that. It's just he stays in his lane. He takes himself where the plot goes, and when it's just so stupid, he has a laugh and kind of plays
Yeah.
into that sarcastic side. So I think that's why I like him. I'm sorry, that's a long-winded answer. I just
No, no, that's fine, and I agree with you because yes, his films are low. Don Wilson's films are lowbrow, but you know what? They're great. I recently watched Rage Ring of Fire 2. I'm not
there
saying
you go. That's a Joe
which,
Bub
which is
favorite.
kind of like a Warriors knockoff, really, isn't
It
it?
really is.
But it right down to the sort of radio DJ putting the calls out to look out for these guys coming into their territory. But it's great fun, and he has fun with it, and he doesn't seem to object to sharing screen time with other characters. Because I think Ron Yuan is in there, and of course Eric Lee from Big Trouble in Little China. So yeah, I mean he is a remarkably down to earth sort of lowbrow movie star. Um, you mentioned Tim Thomerson earlier, and I watched Air America recently, and of course he's in that, and of course he's famous for doing a lot of sort of straight to video or low key independent films like the Trances saga. But to see him in a Hollywood action film more than hold his own against heavyweight names like Mel Gibson and to some extent Robert Downey Jr. was a heavyweight name. He was just really coming into his own at that point. I thought it's such a shame that he didn't get more roles like that. Meaty, character-driven roles where he could show people, hey, guess what? I can act. I can do this. So, but he's a guy that I will miss when his time comes and he stops making movies.
Hmm.
Um,
Thomerson
so
is just funny. I think I remember hearing a podcasting them softly. The guy talked to me and he said,
mhm.
Thomerson, when he does the interviews, he's like, "Oh, my wife hates all these movies I do. It's a tough life being a dad, being a B
I can
movie husband."
imagine, films like Doll Man, Hong Kong 97, which he was really good in actually. But um, if you haven't seen Hong Kong 97, it is out there. It's Robert Patrick, the late
Yeah,
great
I had fun
Brian
with it.
James. Yeah, Brian James attempting another English accent and having fun with it. Definitely worth revisiting. So
Hmm.
next on my Corman list, then Cam is Little Shop of Horrors. Uh, for me, I enjoyed this film because my first introduction to that was, of course, Frank Oz's musical rendition that came out in '87 with um, Rick Moranis, Ellen Green, Steve Martin. So I didn't realize that there was a that Corman had made a film previously. That this is where this originated from. So of course it came on the video. It came to the video store. I checked it out, and I thought it was great. I thought it really was. Again, you could tell it was independent. It was low budget, but some really good performances in there. And seeing Jack Nicholson's debut, you could see how he was already shaping his on-screen persona. Excuse me. He was shaping his on-screen persona. A good fun film, a great introduction to what's become a sort of I don't want to say iconic, but certainly a well-known legendary story. I mean, who doesn't, when they're feeling hungry, say to the person next to them, "Come on, let's go to dinner. Feed me, Seymour." So, yeah, a Little Shop of Horrors has to go in there.
Yeah,
Over to you.
no argument there. I had fun rewatching it after a while because uh just it I'm gonna give you one even better. So I got A Bucket of Blood also with Dick Miller.
Mhm.
And I think people are on the money is it could have been a Twilight Zone episode.
Speaking of Dick Miller, we've got to mention Piranha. We've got to talk about Piranha
Yes.
because talk about a game changer, I feel, in terms of uh, the Jaws exploitation era. Joe Dante and John Sayles came along, probably had a meeting with Corman and said, "Hey, we've got a really good idea about a Jaws ripoff that's actually going to make fun of it, but we're going to use piranha fish." And I can imagine Corman, seeing the dollar signs, but also thinking, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Dante probably said, but Spielberg might sue us for it. Corman probably thought, I don't care. And they did it. And they got and they got some really great cast in there. Kevin McCarthy in there, Bradford Dillman and Paul Bartel. I mean, the story, the effects, the Jaws ripoff, the humor. I mean, again, it's one of those films you watch time and time again, and it still has the same impact, and you come away just feeling like, yeah, that was good fun. Universal did try to sue New World Pictures, only to be saved by Spielberg himself.
Yeah, it's an essential. I love the commentary track with Joe Dante where he jokes about how he it does everything a rip-off movie should do and then be
Hmm.
its own bread and tea. In my
Hmm.
mind, it's the unofficial kind of conspiracy, sci-fi horror trilogy by Dante with The Howling and The
Yeah.
Burbs. It's just so funny how he actually, in this version of Jaws, he has the crooked politician meet their maker by the
Hmm.
creatures, and he has just very over-the-top villains polluting the planet. It's just
Hmm.
fun.
Yeah. Definitely. So, what another one from you, sir?
I'm gonna go with since I already did, yes, I did the gunfighter, did the trip,
Hmm.
Bloodfist, House of Usher. Beginning, actually, no, I didn't.
You haven't
Did I
done
mention
House
the
of
House of
Usher?
Usher? Okay,
No.
yeah, okay. So I'm gonna go with you mentioned The Intruder earlier, but yeah, that's on my list as well. Like, it's not
Hmm.
just because I like Shatner as a B movie guy, but I also it's a really voyeuristic kind of movie too. How you're following this awful shithead around, you
Hmm.
know, and there's no doubt about it. You know he's a bad person. You're wondering what the fuck is he gonna do next? Oh no,
But yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is I remember reading somewhere that it's been cited even post Star Trek. I mean, I know Shatner gets a lot of flack for his acting style, and yes,
hmm
I think some of that is part of his
He's a good
persona,
over actor.
but he's a good overactor. But I think actually he is a good actor as well. I loved him in Boston Legal, but in this one, The Intruder, people actually said it's one of his best performances. And when you watch it, you're not seeing the Shatner that you recognize from Star Trek, from TJ Hooker. Here you have someone who is giving um, quite an amazing performance. I wouldn't say they went quite as far as saying it was Oscar worthy, but people remark on say what an absolutely incredible performance from that man. And I think it's because he's known as the world's best overactor. To see him actually be a thesp on screen surprises everyone. But I think also it's one of those films that's still relevant today. I think you're seeing elements of what's going on there happening today. So, but you mentioned Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah, I like how there's a lot of striking visuals in this
Hmm.
one. It's so funny. I shared a post with it in a B movie group that Rock and Roll High School director Alan Arkish was in, and
Yeah.
it doesn't get as cliche as it is. It's surprisingly very suspenseful and a slow burn, and much like the other Edgar Allan Poe, Henry James
Hmm.
kind of stuff. It takes its time, but it's very diligently. It looks gorgeous in Technicolor. It's
Absolutely.
a very solid costume drama, and it's funny how it's a gothic fantasy horror movie, but it's not really creepy, freaky, and you could watch it with kids, but still be
Hmm.
entertained. It's not just nostalgia. It is kind of just a fun, bizarre, but intriguing experience. It's yeah.
Hmm. Well, I think what people don't always understand about Poe's work is that he wasn't your typical horror writer in the sense that there was a lot of blood and well, there was
That's
some
why I
blood and
liked
gore.
him. He
Yeah,
left stuff to your imagination, kind of like Rod Sterling. He also
yeah,
did the whole just because again, we talked
exactly.
about it before. I get so tired of this every time. People think I don't like action movies because I hate car chases and bad movies. Same thing too. Like when I complain about Saw, people are like, "Oh, you must not like horror." I'm like, I like plenty of horror, just
Hmm.
not that kind. And same thing with mystery. I hate it when it's a overblown Christopher Nolan type plot
Hmm.
twist that doesn't make any sense, and people are like, "Oh, you must not like it." I'm like, everybody has a misfire.
Hmm.
It's just amazing how people jump to very, this or that conclusions. It's like, guys, the world is gray. There's all kinds of
Hmm.
reasons for why something doesn't take off. There are
Of
plenty of
course.
movies which did their job technically. They gave
Hmm.
us everything we wanted, but it wasn't enough, So it's not just the mood, it's not just sometimes it's also just other just minor stuff like,
Hmm.
hey, the movie's fine, but the sound sucks, or the production quality really took me out of it. It's not there's so many other factors to it, and people just always assume it's the stars and the guy running the
Yeah.
show.
I think some people can't always get thoughtful gothic horror. Well, a gothic
Yes.
horror like this. Poe was a very reflective, thoughtful writer, and he wrote from his heart and he wrote about his fears, the most common one being buried alive, which was a common theme through much of
Yes.
his work. And what I loved later on is, have you seen Mike Flanagan's miniseries for Netflix, The
I
Fall
still
of
got
the
to
House of
see
Usher?
I still got to see that one in the Midnight Club. I promise
Hmm.
we'll talk about it soon. But I think Flanagan is definitely once I saw Oculus in theaters, I'm like,
Hmm.
uh, I uh, I think he's just good at just thinking outside the box. He kind of does what
Hmm.
horror technically always started as, where it's a
Yeah.
mystery and there's terror elements instead
Hmm.
of let me rip off, Silence of the Lambs for the
Yeah.
millionth time. Let me, just get in your face, or let me be a weird, Elm Street, Final Destination thing
Hmm.
just to make money. Is like, no, be something more. And Flanagan is good at just making, like, I only had like one misfire show from him, and it was one he wasn't as involved with, but like, he's got a good, much like Fincher now, he's
Hmm.
using the Netflix formula to his advantage, where he's like, I'm going to do 10 episodes, I'm going to helm each one of them.
Yeah.
And I, much like David Lynch, I can justify the plot twist. And anything in the air, it's not meant to be figured out, but it is meant
Hmm.
to bring you out of your comfort zone instead of, I'm just going to fuck around and find out.
Yeah. No, he does. He is a very sort of thoughtful filmmaker in that regard. My introduction to Flanagan was Oculus, which I thought
Same.
uh, I saw that in the cinema and I was completely blown away. It did remind me of an old story that was in an anthology film series. I forget which one it was now. The one with Peter Cushing. Oh wait, all had Peter Cushing in them. All those anthology horrors of the 60s and 70s, where there was a malign presence in the mirror controlling uh, the players, the characters, to do unspeakable things. But it was the drama and the emotion coming from the two players, the two main characters, one of them being our very own Karen Gillan. Uh, but yeah, he's an amazing writer director, and yeah, he really does know his craft and takes that Corman approach to really put the passion and care about what he's doing. Go on then, throw one at me. I think we're down
Oh,
to
you're like in Raging
three.
Bull. Hit me. So like, have you seen The Secret Invasion? So it's another fun take. It actually predates The Dirty Dozen. And it's
Yep.
that kind of movie. You're gonna love all these crane shots
Hmm.
and unusual, criminals becoming World War II fighters. You can totally get Guns and
Hmm.
Navarone vibes. Stuart Granger, Mickey Rooney, Ed
Hmm.
Burns, Henry Silva, for once playing against type, are having the time of their lives. There's some very solid scenery and suspense. And
Yeah.
again, it's a visual thing, but anyone watching
Hmm.
it, you're just gonna, they did, again, kudos to the filmmakers. They make it bigger than it actually is. I think,
Hmm.
again, that's why I love Corman. He showed us the whole, you know, make use of the actors, looking into the
Hmm.
camera, make
Hmm.
use of the scenery, rent a warehouse for 2 weeks, something, make
Hmm.
it look like something it's not, like, and this is what he does, even when it's something infamous like his ski troop attack where he's got unconvincing dummies blowing up, you still appreciate the craft, and that inspires better effects artists to do it even better. He
Hmm.
sets up these blueprints.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one at you. I think we talked about this very briefly online, and we have to mention it because it's going to be relevant. Uh, Fantastic Four,
Yep.
one of the greatest Marvel films never seen or released, unless you look really hard in the depths of the web or in the back room of
There's a
any
sense of fun
existing
with
video.
it,
Yeah.
especially the way those henchmen come out and are just the wacky computer graphics and music.
Hmm.
There's a lot of synthesizer. Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, absolutely. And again, a good use of the actors because I've seen Alex Hyde White, who plays Reed Richards, in a few things. But what made me laugh watching it again recently, I'd forgotten this, is near the opening of the scene where Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom are in a class being taught by none other than the late great George Gaines. Commandant Lassard was giving science lessons to Reed Richards, and I was just half expecting to get to say, "And I will teach you many, 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 many more formulas." But always nice to see George Gaines in something, even in this. I love the story behind this particular film and why it was made and never released. I think there was a company that had a 10-year deal, and to hold on to it, they had to get it filmed. So I think that's a great exercise in in fun absurdity. I've seen that film a few times, and I just enjoy it. And don't get me wrong, I like the big studio Fantastic Four films, well, the first two anyway, with Michael Chiklis as a thing and Ewan Griffith. But I love the lack of pretension in this one. So, and I think with the new Fantastic Four movie coming up, I think it's going to become topical again. And I think there should be a campaign to release the Corman cut of Fantastic Four. Marvel won't do it. Kevin Feige just will not touch that with a barge pole. But it'd be good.
He needs to exit stage right, much like Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm. I don't
Yeah,
care at this rate. I know we're all full of hot takes and like many B movie guys, we
yeah.
can't stand the overdone big budget stuff. And the problem is the trailers. The trailers will give something too much away. Like I'm hearing good stuff about Sinners, how it's kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn, where it's
Hmm.
in Lovecraft Country. But see, I wasn't sure on it because I saw part of the trailer and it was in my face. And so that's
Hmm.
just it. Like I go in empty each time. And if there's some good, reasonable reception and there's not contradicting stuff
Hmm.
where like there's a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and yet 40% by, crowd, that there has to be some consistency, and I got so often, I'm sure you do too, but
Hmm.
I will go to a movie and I'll be like, I got absolutely no vision from that. What was the fucking point?
Hmm.
Like, who is this for? Like, I saw The Accountant 2 last night, or the other night, and I'm like, okay, wasn't 100%, it wasn't perfect, but those guys knew what they were doing,
Hmm.
where they were doing an unusual, bizarre assassin spy drama with some
Hmm.
other unusual, just like underlaying. Is like it's hard to call it derivative of other stuff because it's kind of doing its
Hmm.
own thing. So it's like
Yeah.
that knows what it wants to be. But then I see all these other movies, and it's like the minute you see you're a remake, you're dead in the water, even if it's a pretty good remake. It's just
Hmm.
people, there's so many Nazis online. I'm the same way. Like I saw this very bad like sci-fi space opera on Amazon Prime a few years
Hmm.
back that had a bunch of Buck Rogers and Stargate people in it. And
Yeah.
same kind of deal because the 5-year-olds were getting on their phones saying sucks, turned it off after 5 minutes, 1 star, mixed in with the filmmakers giving it 5 stars. It was very
Hmm.
clear someone worked on it. You know, I always have to suffer the hard way because I can't find any legit reviews. You know,
Yeah. Hmm.
I lose every time. I have to just figure out, okay, I'll make time for this, but it's not going to be now, or give me 2 more years, let me have
Hmm.
the hype die down. There's no
Yeah.
rush.
Hmm.
Chances are, if you're rushing out now to review something, you're probably not going to understand it and just sucker punch it verbally.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go with a well-known one here, Death Race 2000. Sort of gladiatorial action film. Uh, that again is brilliantly shot by Paul Bartel. The script is sharp and it's a lot of fun. Carradine does Carradine as well as anybody can do. And he makes a really good Frankenstein. Sylvester Stallone looks like he's having a lot of fun with that as well.
Yes,
And
without that, you don't get Rocky.
yeah, and yes, it's exploitative in times. It's very much, the guys are cool and the ladies are just there to be ogled. And there's lots of, naked ladies wandering around in the break areas. But I think it is trying to make a point. It is the 70s version of The Purge, really. It's one of those stories that makes you wonder, if they thought they could get away with it, they'd do it. And I but I enjoy it for its satire. I enjoy it for the wacky car designs. I think they're so much fun. How they pulled that off with the budget, I don't know. There's a lot of credit there to the designers and its official sequel, not the Statham Luke Goss remakes follow-ups, but the official sequel that Corman produced in 2017. Um, Again, one of his more overt political films in which you could tell who he was having a go at. It feels a bit like the Hunger Games in places, the 2050 version, but it's good fun and you can see who he's poking fun at. And I can only imagine if he is watching it at the White House, he's probably raging like nobody's business. But Death Race 2000 is again another one that you go back and you appreciate what the message, what it's trying to say. Some great action in there, some gnarly kills if that's your thing.
For sure.
Over to you, sir.
So,
Number
final
two,
one for me is going to be the biography gangster epic Machine Gun Kelly.
Joe. Machine Gun Kelly,
Yeah,
yes.
it's with 1955, starring Charles Bronson in the title role, and it's interesting looking at it in a post like 1940s Scarface way. Like it does
Hmm.
pretty much everything you want from a Prohibition era bootlegger turned guy. You feel a little sympathetic, even though
Hmm.
he's on the run. It's not junky like some of the other ones where they just play around with Tommy gun and
Hmm.
car explosions. There's some fun tension and build up to it. It comes on AMC once in a while.
Okay. And yeah, I know about that one. Yeah, Charles Bronson. I know the story as well. It's just hard to find, even in the days of streaming. It's hard to find. I'll have to sort of dig around, see if it's on Pluto or Tubi somewhere. But I'd like to see that one. And I've heard good things about it. So, final one from me. I think you know where this is going. I've mentioned it enough times. Um, Battle Beyond the Stars. Of all the Star Wars rip-offs or drifts, as the technical term, this one is my favorite. This one is a film I feel works on so many levels. Don't get me wrong, um, as I've grown more technically aware of how films are made and can easily spot where there's an imperfect cut or a scene that's been reused, and by all accounts, Battle Beyond the Stars VFX and scenes are the most reused, certainly in Corman productions. Um, I find that there's a lot of love to be had for this film. It references Star Wars brilliantly, right down to the big Malmori warship that looks like a Star Destroyer, complete with a planet-killing weapon. But what I really love about it is the is John Sayles' Kurosawa influence in that, because as we know, Star Wars was initially influenced by Hidden Fortress, Kurosawa film, in which the events are relayed by two supporting characters who are there for the comic relief. So Sayles went one step further and said, "Do you know what?
He's a solid dude. Yeah.
Yeah, let's really make it very obvious. We'll call the home planet Akir, and we'll call the people who live there the Akira. We'll take the plot from Seven Samurai, which influenced Magnificent Seven, and so forth, and we'll even bring in one of the cast from the Magnificent Seven. I don't know what they paid Robert Lawn for that, but I think he earned every penny, even if he just didn't show much emotion through it. The script is sharp. It's got some great lines in it. Sybil Danning is hilarious. Her inappropriate costume, her inappropriate comments, more than anything, are delivered perfectly. And do you know what? I love the original designs of a lot of the other ships, including the Corsair starship. There's a lot of humor in it, a lot of great characterizations. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of plot hole inconsistencies. You could pick it apart with a fine-tooth comb and find so many. But you know, when you watch it as a whole, to quote Dan Hedaya in The Usual Suspects, there's a system you got to step back and look at it as a whole, and everything just comes into place. And I think this one does. Even with George Peppard, who um, didn't look like he wanted to be there, but still was the consummate professional. and had some of the best lines for him in there. The proper sort of rootin' tootin' talking cowboy loves watching westerns. Yeah, I have a lot of love for this film. I saw this when I was 10 years old, and I still get goosebumps when I see it, and I am really looking forward to seeing this on the big screen at Forbidden Worlds because it'll be reliving my childhood, but it'll also just be getting an appreciation for how good any Corman film, whether it's directed by him, produced by him, it looks good on the big screen. It really does because he gets the best cinematographers in to shoot his films beautifully, as we've talked about in his previous work. So that for me is pure Corman genius. Anything you want to add to
Badass.
that?
I think, I mean, if anything, like much like the Sausage Factory, you end up wanting to follow these guys around and see what they're up to now.
Mhm.
And I hope we can interview more of them because, they're getting up there in age, you know.
Well, we've lost quite a few. Robert Vaughan, George Peppard, obviously, died a few years ago. John Saxon. I mean, I would love to have asked him more about that. There's actually a video on YouTube where John Saxon and Sybil Danning were not reunited because they weren't in any scenes together, but obviously they worked together on the film, and that was quite touching. But so many of them have passed. But yeah, it would be good to get as many interviews as possible. Obviously, it was the film that I don't know if too many people know that gave James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd their breaks. James Cameron was set designer who, even though they had a budget of 2 million, which was big for a Corman production at the time, they still had to improvise on set designs using McDonald's boxes as paper maches for some of the wall designs. And there's a story that Bill Paxton was a carpenter on set as well. It was James Horner's big break, and you can hear the Horner score, the theme in that, which is then repeated or there's a variation of it, if you like, a derivative in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock. And I know James Horner was very much like that. He would pick a sound or he'd pick a melody and he'd repeat it for a while before finding something else. And he'd go through these phases. But this was his early stuff, and it's absolutely great. But I think for a low budget drift of the Star Wars phenomenon, this was definitely one of the best.
I think those are all 10, unless they're checked, unless I'm goofing up
No,
the math.
okay.
But
That
I
sounds
mean,
about
but
right.
yeah, yeah, Piranha would have probably been one of the next ones. And, we got Chopping Mall and everything. And
Oh,
the
chopping
beauty of
mall.
it is it makes you want to almost explore these different isolated film lots.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you even look at other people who became successful afterwards, like, and it's so funny when you see Jonathan Demme and Ron Howard and Coppola working in their cameos for him. But
Hmm.
I guffaw even other times where I just see him just appear. He had a funny interview where Corman was like, "I did so many cameos. After a while, SAG came a knocking saying, 'Get your SAG card.' You're in so many of these movies." And he's been in just so many wacky ones. He's appeared on Conan O'Brien. I saw him in a wacky episode of The Practice where he played a shady businessman going to jail. I'm like, how
Hmm.
funny. Everyone else is going to find that funny. And yeah, I love how, all the people who've been successful, since uh,
Hmm.
I look at the first Terminator and how that was all a guerrilla filmmaking, style. I'm like, see, but Corman didn't make that. He didn't have any part of it, but it might as well be because like everybody's using so much of what they learned from that
Hmm.
factory. Like these guys are going further than say Canon Films, where it's just kind of
Hmm.
a junk food restaurant that's not good, but anyway, everyone goes anyway because they're having fun. There's a
Hmm.
lot of actual evolution of people. Like people are getting more than they would get from a film school reportedly. That's an honor. I
Yes.
want to be known for that. I don't want to be known as the guy who did okay and made sales at Walmart. You know, I want to be known for more than that.
So would you say that was Corman's legacy then? That not only was he,
Yeah,
like I said, whether as a filmmaker or as a producer, uh, he was behind a lot of these films that stand the test of time and have the impact, but that his legacy is in these filmmakers who have evolved and gone on to be the legends that they are.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mhm. And I suppose if you look at some of these films, like James Cameron, for example, and Coppola, they have an indie film spirit about them because they don't churn out films like machines. I mean, I know Cameron's got 10-year gap between each Avatar film, but I mean, and they're big budget films, but
Yeah,
he kind of I think that's him taking his time to make sure he gets it right, regardless of what people think. He's taking his time to get it right and to innovate the VFX like he's always done. He did that with Terminator movies. He did that with the advent of CGI within The Abyss. And
I'm kind of where with him like I am with Scorsese. Just remember
mhm,
the good days. Just
yeah,
like where you are with your favorite bands. If they made three
mhm,
clunker of albums, you just go on to the next one. I applaud so many of these guys we mentioned tonight because they've experimented with so many different styles. They've never stayed in
mhm,
just one lane either. Some filmmakers you want to keep going rummaging for
mhm,
their catalog, and Corman
yeah,
is that kind of guy. I want to.
absolutely.
I found out he produced this one movie for BET, which was about some black Filipino boxer guys. And again, it was just an unusual $1 million movie that his company acquired and distributed. So and it was
Mhm,
from 2004. I forget the name, but I own it. But it's I Corbin. I never know where he's gonna go, and
mhm,
I think it's just that grin. Like he's a trickster, if you will. Like he he leads you to a magic trick, and other times he just leads you to an
mhm,
unusual
yeah,
experiment instead of just yeah, I'm laughing my way to the bank.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Uh,
same thing with Charles Band. Like I've seen people
mhm,
who've done stuff exactly like what he's done. They've done the sci-fi softcore porn.
mhm,
They've done the cheesy slashers. They've done the dark comedy with
mhm,
killer dolls, and they've been awful because they are turning them out so fast. They're kind of doing them deliberately bad. They don't even do the asylums,
mhm,
making fun of blockbuster movies. Like in Band he says in this hysterical 2016 video you can watch on his YouTube channel where he's like, if you don't want me to keep making evil bong, then stop buying my shitty movies. I'm like, that
mhm,
is fucking hysterical. Like I see
yeah,
so many other guys who do that, and then it's like,
mhm,
come on, man, you know what you made this for, and
yeah,
it's so funny how Wynorski works with him because he and Fred Olen Ray, some of their stories don't always line up
mhm,
with what actually happened, so you got to take them with a grain of salt.
yeah, very
Fred
true.
Olen Ray will downplay, I don't like to make this kind of movie. I'm like, well, then why do you
Mhm,
keep making it, Fred? Come on, buddy.
yeah,
It's like he's afraid people will think he's a musclehead or like a meathead or a perv because he keeps making again movies with boobs and wrestlers in
yeah,
them. I'm like, well, because you're good at it. That's why you're doing it.
yeah,
And it's so funny too how Wynorski would downplay, oh, I didn't do this, to
mhm.
be serious. I'm like, you didn't take it serious at all, Jim. That was never a conversation.
One of the things I didn't realize about Corman uh, is that actually he didn't just obviously produce direct films, but he's got a lot of distribution producer credits for films that I either saw on the video shelf and thought one day when I'm older I'll watch that, or I sort of enjoyed as a kid and still enjoy now. And he
Mhm.
brought a lot of world cinema to the video shelves and to
He
people's
did.
attention, like the Baby Cart films.
That's why he would have uh freaking Coppola re-edit them. He's like, I
Hmm.
want you to add extra footage and redub it. It'll
Hmm.
still make the same sense. It's just going to be
Yeah.
more approachable for, taking this Russian fantasy film and just adding
Hmm.
something more magical. And unfortunately, much like any film history book, kind of like how there was that one jerk, I forget his name, but he's been discredited in the Friday the 13th fan community for saying a lot of unsighted stuff and perpetuating rumors, like to
Hmm.
where I forget his name, but like they discontinued a special feature on like one of the Shout Blu-rays because how
Hmm.
unreliable he was. He was kind of the cool kid who just talks shit.
Yeah.
And you see that with some early film history books where they were like, "Oh, Corman produced Hellraiser." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. He had sold New World Pictures. They got the 1 million from whoever was running New World Pictures, not him."
Hmm.
And that was when he was starting New Horizons and all the other ones.
Hmm.
So if people go down the rabbit hole, just make sure you're going for something that's not, a GeoCities or and in fact, listen to the New World Pictures podcast. They do fun
Hmm.
stuff. That they had Tony Mandel on there, and it was so funny how they were just quizzing him. It's like, tell us
Yeah.
which of your IMDb trivia is true or not. And most of the time, Tony was like, I cut stuff for New World. I didn't direct that movie. What the fuck? Where'd you get that from? It was so funny. And Peter Atkins, the Hellraiser 2 for 4 and
Yeah.
Wishmaster uh,
Wishmaster. Yeah.
writer, was talking about it, and I've interacted with him briefly. He jokes how Tony is just so shy. I'm like, why is this? Tony's so outgoing, but it's just so funny. A lot of
Hmm.
these guys, I mean, people wonder why did they do this podcast and not that guy's or this
Hmm.
guy's? You got to just say a magic word. Sometimes you got to be patient. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're just being a drama queen. They're in their own
Hmm.
crazy world. We all are in our own crazy world in some
Hmm.
capacity.
Okay. One final thought about Corman then and his legacy. Um, Now, I think if somebody comes up to me and says, or asks the question, where can I, how would you define Roger Corman's legacy? I would say, if you want to know that, go through his list of 500 odd films, pick some of these titles that we've discussed, but go through the list and just pick a few from there, enjoy yourself, pick a few more. The other uh, illustration of his legacy is you look at how films have been made in Hollywood by by well-known directors, well-known filmmakers over the last 40, 50 years. You look at how they're being made and you will see uh Corman in pretty much most of them. And I think that's the mark he's left. That's the legacy he's left.
Yes,
Um, your final thoughts on that?
I concur. It is one of those pick and choose, and then he's a perfect example of curiosity killed the cat, and you wish they could still teach them in some film schools. And obviously, you're going to be fans of most of these filmmakers, like even some
Mhm.
of the cinematographers who he worked with. I think it was Valtros or whatever his name is, who
Mhm.
used to work for Scorsese and Coppola, and it's just like
Mhm.
Michael Cimino later on. And you're just like, yeah, see where they got their start, and it's no different than when you see, like George Clooney or Bill Paxton, pre-fame. Just check out some of what they did prior, and do you be the critic. Did they do just as good a job before they were famous, or were they still learning? And you
Mhm.
have fun looking at a blueprint. I mean, ultimately, that is what we all want, which is to see people evolve.
Well, that's it for this episode of Cine Bijou. Thanks for joining us as we pulled open the curtain once more, revealing the world of independent film and the creative mavericks who make it all happen. You can find this and every other episode on Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, and of course, Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, why not leave a star review or drop us a comment? It's a small gesture, sure, but it means the world to us, and it helps fellow film fans find their way to us too. Make sure you also follow us on all the usual social media haunts: Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky. And for reviews, features, and more, why not pay us a visit at our website www.cine-bijou.co.uk. And if you are spreading the word, please don't forget to use the hashtag #SupportIndieFilm, because every share helps keep great stories in the spotlight. Until next time, keep listening, keep discovering, and as ever, let's keep that indie flame burning.